if you have to leave early, or if a friend, a friend wanted to watch it and they weren't able to come, we will have it available, and we'll share where it'll be available after today. So welcome everyone to the Internship Insight Workshop. My name is Megan Spalding. I am a career advisor in the Albers School of Business and Economics in the Albers Placement Center. If you're unfamiliar with our office, we are basically the career center for the business schools. So we help support grad students, undergrad, and alumni of Albers in all things career planning, career exploration, getting an internship, which is what we're here for today. And so we're really excited to see you all here for our workshop today. We've got a great panel lined up for you, and we hope this will provide really good insight and tips and awareness on, how to go about this process and have really good internship experiences to help propel your career beyond Albers. So just a little kind of shout out to my team who's also in the Zoom with us. We've got Mary Lou Moffitt is our director. Justin Dolce is our grad student career advisor. Many of you probably seen him if you're a grad student. Lori Nilo is actually our new teammate. She started with us about 2 weeks ago. We're really excited to have her on board. She's our employer relations manager, and she's also a career advisor for undergrad students. And then I'm Megan. I'm a career advisor as well for undergrad students. So beyond today, after you hear and get all this great advice from the panel, any kind of support or help you need in your internship search process, we are happy to provide that and come alongside and guide you through that process. So this will be kind of like big, overarching topics. And then if you're needing help with your specific search, we would be happy to help you with that in a more of a one-on-one advising situation. So just to make sure we really utilize our time, I'm going to jump right in and introduce our panel. Kind of how this is going to work is we've got some pre-planned questions ready to go for the panel based off of kind of questions we get from students a lot in our appointments and when we're helping students. And then we definitely want to make sure that we end, with enough time for you all to ask questions of the panel as well. So I think we'll try to save your questions for the end. But if something comes to mind and you don't want to forget it, please put it in the chat. And then when we get to that Q&A portion, we'll go through the chat questions. And you can we'll read it off of the chat, or you can unmute yourself and kind of ask the panel. So jot your question down or put it in the chat as we're going through if you want to ask the panel something. So let me introduce our wonderful panelists. So you can, and then they'll tell you a little bit more. We'll go into their introductions a little bit, but just going kind of alphabetical. Swati Bangalore Madhuranath is a MSBA grad student currently. She had a great internship at Costco. I think it was last summer, right, Swati?
That's right.
Yeah. So welcome, Swati. So she's a current grad student in Albers, and we'll be able to talk about kind of more from that perspective. Harley Blackard. Harley, if you want to wave. He's currently a senior finance major, graduating in June, right, Harley? Yep. And Harley's had multiple internships, Cascadia Capital, BMO, Microsoft, Rainier Partners. So he's kind of had a lot of different internship experiences, which I think will be helpful for you to hear about today. Alex Dalzell, you want to wave, Alex? Alex just graduated in December. Congratulations, Alex. So brand new alum, and Alex was a global business major undergrad, and she had internships at PSB and Illuminera, and is now currently working full-time at PSB. So she'll be able to kind of talk about an internship turning into full-time, which is really exciting for her. And then Ni Nguyen is a senior finance major, graduating in March, so just a couple weeks. And Nee has had internships at Jam City, that's where she currently is, Thermo Fisher Scientific, and Business Impact Northwest. So, and I've asked each person here on this panel for some specific angles as well. So we're going to kind of cover those based on, different aspects of the internship process and search process and what students encounter. So we'll get into those. But I thought we could start with maybe each panelist briefly describing the internship, like briefly, like started out here, and then, the next summer I did this, or, just kind of give us the rundown of kind of your progression through the internship process, I guess. So whoever wants to go, whoever wants to start. Alex, you want to start?
Yeah, I can go. Okay. So my name is Alexandra. Megan, thanks so much for having me here today. So the internship experiences that I've had, the first one I had was in August of 2018, where I worked as a marketing intern for the Luminera Group in Shanghai. And my second internship was this past summer, June through December of 2021, where I was a data analyst for the social team for PSB.
Great. And so, Alex, your first internship was what, after sophomore year?
It was during my sophomore year abroad.
Okay, got it. Good. Swati,
Oh.
Or Nee, whoever. Go ahead, Nee.
Yeah, I can go. So I was a transfer student. So I transferred in 2019 and fall 2019. And my first internship was in, I think, winter 2020 at Business Impact Northwest. So in Chinatown of Seattle. And I did an accounting internship there. It was an unpaid internship. And then in summer 2021, I did a summer intern at Thermo Fisher Scientific. So it's like a biotechnology company. And I work in R&D finance, so mostly with R&D teams on capital budgetings and return on investment projects for them. And I look at them like rolling out vaccines because they're partnering with Pfizer to roll out vaccines and all that good stuff. And then right after Thermo Fisher in September 2021 until now, I'm interning at so financial planning analysis for Jam City. It's a unicorn, a mobile games company in California, and was founded by a MySpace co-founder. So it's super exciting.
Cool. Thanks, Nee. Swati or Harley, do you want
to? Hi. Thanks for having me here. So I started this course in September 2020, and I did my internship at Costco for this summer. In 2021. So I was working for the IT assets management team, where I was a data analyst intern. So basically I was supporting the assets management team in reporting and analysis of the license contracts. So I'll be graduating in March. So I'm currently looking for full-time opportunities.
Good. And Harley?
Hi, everyone. So my first internship experience was a little over a year ago it would have been spring quarter of my junior year at Rainier Partners. They're a newer private equity firm. That one was part-time, unpaid. And then moving into the summer, following my junior year, I worked at Microsoft. I did a corporate FP&A role with them. That one was full-time and paid. And then this most recent fall quarter, the one that just wrapped up, I was at BMO, the Bank of Montreal, doing an investment banking internship. That one was part-time paid. And then currently I'm at Cascadia Capital, another middle market investment bank in Seattle. And this one is full-time and paid. And just trying to give metrics on times and if they're comments there or not, if anybody has questions about those.
Yeah, so I think the exciting thing, I think I hope this all gives our participants hope, is that you all got internships during the pandemic, which is great. You've all been interning recently, so internships are still out there. Companies are hiring for them. So hopefully all of you who are in the search process, that gives you some hope that internships are still alive and well. So whoever wants to start out, we don't have to go in a specific order, but first major question, I think a lot of people will be wondering this is, as you were in your search process, looking for internships and applying, what were the most effective strategies for both finding internships and then getting an internship? Like, what was the thing that worked best for you or was the most effective? Or, kind of if somebody's in the middle of their search right now, what would be your best kind of advice to them for that process?
I would go first. So like all of you might be doing, I use resources like LinkedIn, Handshake, especially to apply for jobs. And one of the strategies which I would say would that really worked for me was to write a cover letter when you're applying for jobs, because from my personal experience, it did get me interviews. For example, if you have a skill that is described on the job description, which you have not worked on it personally in an industry, you could mention that in your cover letter, like project, if you worked on that technology. So that would really help, to get through that process and the initial stages of screening and get the interview process. And also reaching out to recruiters on LinkedIn did help for me to get some interviews. So yeah, you could use all those networking, especially to get interviews at the first place.
Good, Swati. Thank you.
I guess I would expand a little bit on networking, because to me, I think networking was one of the most effective strategies so if I get the interviews, one of the effective strategies for me to actually get the job. So what I did was, after I get the interviews, I always, let's say I got an interview for the finance internship at Thermo Fisher. It's like a internship program. So I went on LinkedIn, I looked up some of the people that used to be in that programs or used to, in the same positions, and I reached out to them, cold message on LinkedIn, try to set up a call with them, and figured out, ask them questions. It's like informational interviews, and ask them questions on the interview process, the experience at Thermo Fisher Scientific, and what I could do to, ace my interview. And then I got a lot of insights from them. And then when I went to the actual interview, I was able to show my interviewers that I know a lot about the companies, not just, things on Google, but more about the operations, the environments, and the working culture of the company. And I was also able to tell my manager that I had the connections in the program. And I think the managers was pretty impressed with that, because with the program, they try to connect people with other folks on the team. And I think that was one of the reasons why I got the internship at Thermo Fisher.
To start off with the overall search process, and this goes for finance especially, but really in any business discipline, it's just so broad nowadays, and it's really hard to tell from a job posting or a job title exactly what that job entails. So a big part of my search process, and something that I wish I had done a little more, was reaching out to people or asking around about job titles that you find interesting, and asking them what their day-to-day really looks like. And asking yourself, can you envision yourself doing that in an internship and potentially an entry-level job? Because a lot of that day-to-day work doesn't really make it to the job posting. And then so once you've kind of done your vetting and you know where your interests are and where your strengths are, quite frankly, it really comes down to networking. Out of the 4 internships I've had, that's not even counting the triple-digit applications, and all 4 of those internships I could trace back exactly to who I know in my network got me the interview. So you really can't understate the importance of networking. It's never too early to start. And as far as the interview tips, when you do get there, I've always liked to go under the assumption that if you get invited for an interview, they liked what they saw on your resume, and you should be confident in what you have and the experiences you're bringing to it. So really, the interview is a chance to A, communicate your interests, and B, to communicate your strengths. And again, I'll use finance as an example. I think, Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think finance is the biggest major at Albers, and probably the same over at UW. So in terms of skills and courses, applying to jobs in finance and other disciplines, it's not too differentiated. So you really need to focus in on what's going to make you stand out in an interview, what's going to make the recruiter and what's going to make the interview remember your interview, and how you communicate that, how you make an impression, even if it's virtually. You know, an impression in an interview goes a long way to actually securing that internship.
Hi. For my strategies at finding an internship, I have a few different things that I do. For the one in Shanghai, I had known somebody that worked for a big tech company, and they were able to set me up with somebody, like one of their friends. And so I kind of connected that way to try to interview for the company in Shanghai. But for internships in general, I recommend just applying for everything that you can and creating a spreadsheet, kind of tracking the progress on your applications, whether you got an interview, whether you have to do like some sort of test, because a lot of internships or jobs I applied for asked for some sort of test to do, and just keeping them all straight and kind of categorizing them would help. And as I said, don't be afraid to like apply all over the US, because that's what I did. I feel as if part of it is a game against numbers. So the more that you apply, the more chances you have of getting the job. I'd also suggest, if you really want, or if you kind of want the internship, I would say practice for the interview for about 8 hours. That's what I did for, or for each interview I do 8 hours. And that means maybe if you got invited for the interview for tomorrow, cancel all your plans for today and study the company extremely well, come up with stuff that differentiates yourself. And if they ask like, oh, tell me about yourself, don't tell them like just your name and your major or whatever. Tell them really interesting stuff about yourself and kind of tell a story with your interview. That way they can kind of get to know you as a person, because they can just read your resume to figure out like your major and stuff like that. And then for a full-time job offer, for mine, I prepared for the interview for 15 hours. So I say like, take it a little bit more seriously. And I kind of like creating a script of stuff that they could ask you and then potential responses for that. I didn't end up using it in the interview, but by the time you type everything up for the script, it will be kind of in your head as to like what you want to say. So I'd really recommend kind of planning out what you want to say, but you also don't want to sound too scripted. So by the time the interview comes, you might want to take away your script, and then just be confident when you're talking and really sell yourself, but also don't come off as cocky either.
Awesome. That's great, you guys. So, okay, I heard a theme kind of throughout of networking, right? Which feels like an elusive term for people. So, Swati, it sounds like you reached out to recruiters. Nee, you kind of reached out to people working at the company, finding them on LinkedIn, I'm assuming. Harley, who did you just know people at your company? Can you guys delve into that a little bit more? How did you find, because everybody kind of, it's clear, like go apply on Handshake, apply on LinkedIn. But it's kind of that next step of like, how do I make a connection? What worked well for that for you? Did you actually hear back from people? Like, kind of, can you delve into that a little bit more for people?
So when I reach out to folks on LinkedIn, the company, I kind of like look them up on LinkedIn and try to find people with similarities. But if not, I just like reach out. And usually, let's say if I reach out like 100 people on LinkedIn, the chance that I got the response back in like a couple weeks was just, I think, 10% or a little more. Yeah.
So these were cold asks where you just kind of were like, I'm interested in your company. Can I touch base and ask you more about your time there and working there, that kind of thing?
That's right. Especially if a company is not in Seattle. If it's in Seattle, there's like a lot of alum, but not kind of like cold reach and apply.
Yeah. Thanks, me. Go ahead, Harley. Sorry.
I just want to piggyback off that before I talk about my own experience. But something that I noticed, we talk about, the internships during the pandemic. It almost seems like professionals were more likely to take calls and lunches or virtual chats, after everybody went online, because everyone's schedule just got a lot more flexible. So keep that in mind as we do slowly shift to back in person. But really how networking played out for me was just, again, the earlier you start, the better. Be intentional with who you're reaching out to, and don't reach out just to reach out, and keep an open mind. So I mentioned I can trace all of my internships back to two people who are both SU alum, and one of them I met at a networking event my second quarter here, and I barely knew I wanted to be a finance major then, but I went to the event, ended up meeting an alum who's actually in our mentor program, and that was all the way back in my first year. And I kind of just fostered that relationship, checked in periodically, asked for some informational interviews. And then when the time came junior year, when an internship was posted, it turns out he knew the two co-founders of the firm that I wanted to work to. So it's in no way could I ever predicted that, thinking back to my freshman year and whatever, the Casey Atrium, wherever, when things were in person. And same goes, I think the other alum that I met, we had actually met at one of the placement center events at Optimism. Megan, I'm blanking on the name. Yeah, career night. That was right before the shift to virtual. But again, it's definitely helpful to reach out. And again, that's kind of the only option right now. But as things do go back in person, it almost seems like people tend to remember their in-person interactions a little more, especially if there's already that alumni base there. So really utilize the events that not only the placement center puts on, but it's likely that your specific department will put on a networking event for professionals within your field. And like I said, it might have taken 3 years, but that one connection I made my first year ended up being extremely valuable to me later in my career.
Cool. Thanks, Harley. Swati, Alex, any other comments?
Yeah, I used to reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn whenever I see a job posting. So in LinkedIn, you have an option called as in-mail. So that directly goes to the recruiter. So I used to use that option. So I used to often send my resume to them. I used to brief out what all projects I've done, and I used to attach my resume to them, and I used to send it to them. And I did get a couple of interviews through that. And once I get the interviews from certain companies, what I used to do is I used to go to the LinkedIn and find some people who work in that company in that domain, and reach out to them and ask what technologies they are using right now, so that that questions might come up in the interview if I know what tools and technologies they're using. So I used to get prepared on that, and I used to ask how was their interview process when they were interviewing. So so I used to reach out, I used to follow these kind of strategies, especially for networking. So that really helped me.
Is your response pretty good, Swati? Do people get back to you mostly?
Not really. So hardly, like 10 to 15% maybe.
Yeah. I always recommend to students, like, pull the student card as much as you can.
Yeah.
So I'm a student, I'm in exploration, or I'm graduating and I'm trying to figure out what's going on for me. Love to hear more about you. I think there's like a lot more sensitivity to student aspects. So definitely mentioning that and bringing that up might be a better response rate from people. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel as if for me, networking didn't really get me too far. My family, like people in my family, have tons of like tech connections and whatnot. And for a lot of my apps, I would put some sort of reference. It would either be like a family friend or whatnot for all these different companies. But because a lot of these companies are so big, putting references on there doesn't really necessarily do much. And so for me, honestly, the strategy of just applying everywhere, even though not knowing those people, worked pretty well for me. And also I'd say, like, while I was trying to apply for a full-time position for PSV, it really helped applying internally, because then I could find people in the organization that I could ask about their job roles and then do informational interviews with. But it's kind of hard coming from the standpoint of just being like a random person, trying to get information, but definitely being like already in the company and then trying to get information that way really helped.
So you kind of did some networking once you were in your internship and utilized it that way, kind of thing.
Yeah, once I was in, before that, it didn't really work out well for me.
Good. That's okay. Thanks for your honesty. That's good. What do you wish you had known before interning, or what would you have done differently with your process, if anything?
I guess I can answer this one too. I would say just not get discouraged about applying to the internships. Originally, I was kind of discouraged, and I was thinking of different plans for my summer that were not an internship. And I would say just don't be discouraged and apply, because I got an internship pretty much like the last day of school. So I was pretty much ready to go into my summer, maybe getting all these different certifications, because that was my backup plan if I didn't have an internship. But then I got my internship on the last day of school. And so also, maybe you could say that internships come when you're not expecting them or when you're not actively looking. I guess you could also say that too.
One thing I would say specifically for school year internships is make sure you've got your schedule down, you know what the time commitment's going to be, you know how much you can flex, and kind of set in those buffers so that school doesn't take away from the internship and the internship doesn't take away from school. Most firms that set up a school year internship are pretty well aware of that. They know you're in classes, they know your schedule's going to change, but you know, there's always the off chance that you could be taking on a lot more than you were expecting initially. So that's something to be aware of. And just overall, I think a view that I wish I had at the beginning of internships is really asking yourself, you know, you're doing a lot of work for the company, but what can the company or what can the employees do for you? And really taking advantage of your time there. I mean, depending on what kind of firm you work for, you could have access to these great learning resources, networking events, you know, everything down to like, I think one of my internships gave like discounts on like museums and other just fun places to go in Seattle. So really tap in. Most internships do treat you like a junior employee. So figure out what resources you have access to, figure out who's going to be either a formal or an informal mentor during your time there, and just use it as a time to learn as much as you can.
I will talk about if having like multiple offers, because like when I had like so many meetings with Megan, when I got like 2 or 3 offers and try to figure out which one should I choose. And at first I thought that I could choose based on like the popularities of the companies, but then later on I figured out that's more of, you know, the interaction that you have with the interviewer that most of the times turn out to be your internship manager, and the opportunities the company, as Harley mentions, like the resources at the company and all other things that at the company that cannot explain by the names of the company. And I think that's what I wish I could known like before, so I can get an easier time figuring out what companies I want to be at. Yeah, and thanks to Megan.
You did all the hard work, me. That's a good thought, right? That's a good perspective of not only focusing on the big brand names, right? Multiple of you have had internships with places that people maybe have never heard from, and they were great experiences still. So yeah, that's great. Just a couple specific aspects I would love each of you to touch on. Let's see, Swati, any specific advice, especially for grad students going through this process that might be different from an undergrad experience that you've learned or you would pass along?
Sure. So I would rather focus on international graduate students, maybe because I'm an international graduate student. So I would say whenever you're looking for an internship opportunity, maybe your first priority could be, if you're planning to stay in the United States for a longer period of time, maybe first preference has to be given to the companies which would be offering the work visa in the future, because I would say internship is the first step to get the foot in the door, because from my experience, what I've seen is for the internships, there is less intense rounds and there is less number of rounds as well. So if you work well, you can get into a full-time job right in there. But if the companies are not offering sponsorship, they might push you back, so that you have to go through the process all again once. Finding the full-time opportunities is kind of very difficult. because there will be more intense rounds, especially in terms of technical, and more number of rounds as well. So I would say if you're planning to stay for a longer period of time, look for companies which would sponsor work visa in the future.
Cool. Thank you, Swati. And we have tricks into if you want to meet with, Justin or Mary Lou, we've got some resources where you can kind of research who is, willing to sponsor or go through that process. Harley, do you want to comment? Could you comment on benefits, negatives, etc., on having multiple internships? Because you've had 4 now, which is a lot, which is great. What kind of, can you comment on what that's been like for you?
Yeah, happy to. I'll start off with the negatives. I really don't think there's a negative to having more than one. The only thing that comes to mind is if it's, like I said, if it's during the school year, make sure you're pretty familiar with your schedule and what your time commitments look like. But other than that, I don't think there will ever be a downside to gaining more experience within your field. In terms of the benefit, probably the most salient one for me has been seeing what I don't want from a job. And it almost sounds kind of backwards, but really when I went into like my first 1 or 2 internships, I learned very quickly, really what I didn't like doing, what I could not imagine myself doing at this age, at this time, from 9 to 5. And I think a lot of us can probably relate. We go into our first our first internship thinking everything's going to be great, and it's, I'm going to love this company and I want to get hired here. But really my advice there would be to just take it for what it is and be honest with yourself about what do you really like about the role, what do you really not like about the role, and you can take that with you into future experiences. Another big thing is just stuff you pick up on the job that you wouldn't necessarily pick up in class, and that goes for one internship, it goes for multiple. But honestly, the thing that comes to mind is, especially these past 2 internships, is how to dress on the job. Really what it looks like, because we can talk about general business casual versus business professional, but really it's the more face-to-face questions over lunch, like, hey, like how does the firm dress here? Or if I wanted this type of job, like how should I look? How should I show up? And lastly, just kind of going off that, on the job experience is unmatched. What you learn in your classes will definitely set up a foundation for you, and it'll help you be informed when you talk about certain things at your internship. But a week at an internship to me is worth a quarter of class. So really, the more you can build on that and the more you can do the things day to day, you'll have a clearer picture of what you want to do.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I actually learned what I didn't want to do. I think sometimes it's, as important, if not sometimes more important than, figuring out what you do. That's a key element, because it helps narrow your focus, right? And then you're not stuck in something long-term that, maybe is not right for you or kind of miserable for you. So thank you. That's great. Alex, you want to comment on the experience you've had of now your internship turning into a full-time job opportunity? How did that come about? How'd you maximize that?
Yeah, so originally my internship was only supposed to be over the summer, so June 2021 until when school started. And so I ended up booking a vacation to Mexico to celebrate being done with my internship. This was at the beginning of summer. But then I realized that my internship got extended. So I had my break in Mexico, and then when I started back at school in the fall, I also started my internship again for the fall. And so what I would say is, first off, like, impress your boss, make your boss extremely happy, work extremely hard, log in the earliest of anybody on your team if you can, and stay the latest if you can. Also be extremely enthusiastic about what you're doing. Do not be afraid to ask questions, and also find ways to make processes more streamlined. I basically, for my internship at PSB, I was working on creating basically like queries to find what people would say about certain things over social media. So for example, there's this one company that we worked with that was a Fortune 500 company and wanted to find out what people were buying for Christmas. That way they could figure out how to better market their products. And so I helped with like query creation for that and basically mining multiple social media sources to figure out like what people were buying and who they were buying for. And I forgot where I was going with this, but yeah, basically work extremely hard. Oh, and be enthusiastic and find ways to, find ways to streamline processes. So although, so my education got my foot through the door, I'd say with this internship, but the analytics and stuff that I did was nothing that I learned in school. But school really helps you look at things a lot differently. And so I was able to kind of use the tools that I had, such as my knowledge in R, to make things easier for the team. And so while we'd use different software and platforms to data mine and also do analytics, I used R to do some like text parsing and create visualizations on R for the team. And I think like part of the reason why my internship translated into a full-time job was because I was always trying to find ways to improve things. And I wouldn't just wait for somebody to say like, oh, do this. I try to figure out using my certain skills, how I could like better the process. And so nobody really on my team had much experience with R. So really like pulling in R to try to assist the team. Creating like slide decks of slides that could help with our reporting. So I'd say like my biggest thing is work extremely hard and don't wait for somebody to tell you what to do. Go ahead and show them like what you know and how you can help benefit the team.
Great, Alex, thank you. And me, do you want to talk about kind of specific advice? You can also mention about, benefit of multiple, but also from the perspective of an international student at the undergrad level, what advice or perspective, maybe from both of those angles?
Yeah, I think I'll speak more of like international student perspective undergraduate. And I think Swati have mentioned like about sponsorship, and then I think be very transparent in the process with the employers. But then also try to be confident and show that you have the skills that's necessary for the jobs, and but then be transparent with the company so that to avoid any complications afterward. And I'll also talk about applications. So since as an international student, of course, you don't have this, certainly a lot of companies not willing to hire international students. So I did a lot of mass applications. So I applied total of like, I think internship with like 200 applications, and I only heard back, I think 30-ish. And then I got like 3 offers in like 3 months. So I think that was really good to me at the time. And also as an international student, I figured out that because like English is not the first language. So then when I first practicing interviews, like behavioral interviews and technical interviews, I had a lot of issues with like phrasings and all of the like it was really nerve cracking. So I think practice a lot and try to I did like mock interviews with people at least like twice per week during the higher season. And I think that's really helped me to bring that confidence to the real interviews. And then when I actually got into the internship, I was trying to figure out ways to connect with my internship manager. And because that also with like international students, different culture and different working culture as well. So I think when I came to Thermo Fisher, I was able to connect with my internship manager, and I was also I pulled my student card and international student card out as well. I was like telling him about being an international student. He was actually very surprised that I was international, and he taught me a lot on how to, work with people in higher ups, work with people in R&D, and work with people around the company. He tried to, be a bridge between me and then the US corporation. And I think that was really helpful. And I found that because like that was one of the most challenging things to me at first. And then after the internship, I think as Harley has mentioned, try to figure out the companies, even though you're international student, but you still have a lot of competitive advantages. So try to figure it out, where you want to be in full time. It doesn't have to be the company that you intern with. Like in my case, I continue going to career fair, talk to SU alums to figure out the companies that I want to be full time, and that's why I got into Starbucks. So in Seattle, through a lot of connections with the alumni at SU as well. So I think, so to sum up, I think confidence, practice, and then know your worth and know that you have a lot of competitive advantage as an international student. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you all. Maybe one more main question for the group, and then we can open up into Q&A. I guess if you were to summarize, how has the internship experience impacted your career journey overall? Like if you had to sum it up, what were kind of the major ahas from your internship experience for your career going forward?
I would say it was a great foundation for my career because I'm new to the data analytics field. And whatever I learned through my coursework, especially the tools and technologies, I was given an opportunity at Costco where I could apply them to the real-time projects. And so I was able to identify what I was really interested in during my internship process, what I would be loving to do in the future of my career. So I was able to figure out that. So it really gave me a great foundation for my career in the future as well.
Thanks, Swati. Whoever else wants to go.
I'm a little bit different from Harley, so I wasn't able to figure out what I want to do like during the internships, or like what I don't like to do. So that's why I think with the internships I was able to see a lot, and I think I want to see more. That's why I try to look for rotation program after graduation, because even after graduation I'm still able to rotating through different teams, and hopefully at least like 2 years from now I'll figure out what I want to do in the long term.
I love it, Nee. You're getting closer though, right? You know a lot more things. Good. Alex, Harley?
One of the probably most fulfilling parts or enriching parts, I guess, of the internship is being able or having that exposure to someone who's sitting in the seat you want to be in 10, 15, 20 years. And this will depend on the internship structure and the size of the company. But I'll talk about Rainier Partners. The two managing partners there were relatively young. It was a small company. I could walk in their office anytime. And this goes back to really leveraging your time there. Because if I was just to reach out to them as an alum or as just a regular student, I probably wouldn't have gotten an email back. But the fact that you're interning for a company or for a firm, it's a lot easier to have those conversations about what did your first job look like, or what did you do to make things really impactful your first 5 years out of undergrad. Because again, there's some experiences, there's some bits of knowledge that you'll only pick up from people who have done it before. So just being in the same room, and if it's your manager, your internship mentor, your manager's manager, just see if they have time for lunch or coffee and ask them, how do I get to your spot? If that's the spot you want to go to. And if not, then ask them, how do I get here or how do I get there? And they usually, in general, I feel like people like to talk about themselves. So it's not too hard of an ask, especially, over a nice cup of coffee. And it could really, really help you plan not only the rest of your undergrad, but your first 2, 3, 5 years out of college.
That's great. Thanks, Harley. Alex?
Yeah, so the internship experience impacted my career journey because the first internship I worked for was also marketing consulting, but I worked with qualitative data. So I helped create slide decks, bilingual slide decks for this Chinese company. And so I was able to kind of see the qual side of marketing research. And then my second internship, the one with PSB, I looked at social data. So basically seeing what people say online and how that affects perceptions of different things. And I basically, from these two experiences, thought like, oh, I really enjoy marketing research and I want to become more well-rounded in market research. And so that is why I decided to take up this full-time job opportunity for a qual/quant team, because I just wanted to become better rounded. And I feel as if having knowledge in multiple different areas of marketing research would help me become a better person in this space. And so that is kind of how my internships help shape that. And also because of my internships, I also have knowledge in those different areas. And so I can kind of contribute to my new team that the information that I learned in those different internships.
That's great. Thank you guys. Great comments. Okay, well, I want to make sure we get to audience questions. So I've kind of gone back in the chat a little bit. Thank you all for also responding in the chat. There's some chat conversation going on, which is awesome. Back to I know everybody kind of has mentioned how helpful networking was in the process for them. What if you're shy or networking is kind of hard, you're more of an introvert? Does anybody want to comment any tips, or if anybody struggles with that, how you get over that?
When it comes to networking, I would say find a style or an environment that works well with your style. So for me, I'm definitely more on the introverted side. So while like cold reaching out to a recruiter on LinkedIn or by email, that's usually not something I would do, but a more laid back, casual, like alumni in-person setting, that's something that I'm a lot more comfortable with. And that's just something that's worked for me in the past. But again, it's just a matter of understanding your style, understanding your approach, refining your approach. If you do like to be more direct and kind of get straight to the point, think about your message and what you're reflecting in your message and how you reach out. But there's styles for everybody. I mean, just students tend to go one way or another, and so do professionals. So you just got to match your style.
Okay, thanks. Somebody asked, how do we know if the company we're interning at or interested in sponsors? And Swati put in a great link to myvisajobs.com. I recommend that a lot as well. So you can kind of do that research of who has submitted applications for sponsorship. And that might direct your internship search a little bit more. There's been some conversation of how many applications have you guys submitted? A lot, 150, 200. So it is one of those, obviously, and I say this a lot in appointments, you've got to just like keep moving forward, keep applying, but also find those ways to get beyond just that online application that we've been talking about. And it just takes that one great interview, right? And that one callback to bring it together. So just kind of keep going. Does silence from a company automatically mean rejection? I think some people have commented, I think a few of you commented that you felt a little more ghosted during this process than maybe full-time process. Does anybody else want to comment on that? If you didn't hear back, did you just keep moving forward? Kind of after you've applied and you're waiting, kind of any thoughts or advice around that?
I'd love to go into detail on that. So during my internship experience or search experience, I was pretty much ghosted all the time. And so I had a spreadsheet with the status of these internships just blank because I didn't hear anything back from them. But it's such a relief once you graduate and you apply to full-time offers and you hear back very quickly. For internships, I waited so long to hear back, or I just never hear back. But then with full-time job offers, like I'd apply and then maybe within a week, I'd get my rejection or whatnot. But it was so nice just not being in the middle, wondering like, ooh, will I hear back or will I not? And so I just want to tell you all, it gets better. I feel having some, just like some closure with these applications helps really reduce stress And so once you apply to full-time jobs, you hear back so much faster.
That's great, Alex. Thanks. I think Harley too commented in the chat. You would follow up, Harley, after about a week or so, if you had a contact.
Yeah, and it depends on kind of how you applied. I feel like a general, just resume drop, online apply, 1 to 2 weeks is appropriate. I had kind of pushed this one up to a week because this was a internal referral. And again, something that I put in the chat that's super important, like in the beginning, I almost thought of it, or some people might hold themselves back because they don't want to come off as like pesky or bothering the firm. But in reality, I think it shows you're more interested than most candidates if you do put in the effort to follow up, ask, what the status of your application is. But yeah, as long as you do it in moderation, you definitely don't want to be emailing them every day or at midnight, but just saying, hey, checking in, I'm still interested. If there's anything else I could do to let me know.
Good. Yeah, and I don't know if many people know this handshake, which probably most of you have been on or at least are familiar with. Handshake, I find that a lot of students don't realize that it's just for colleges and universities. So a university has to have an account with Handshake in order for their students to have access. Employers are centralized, and then they can decide which schools that are signed on to Handshake, where they're going to post their position. So I find that if you are trying to do some follow-ups, sometimes it's a little bit easier to do that within Handshake. You can either go to the company's page, see if any contacts are listed. A lot of times employers themselves are reaching out through the messages part of Handshake. So I've just found that I think there's a little bit easier route to kind of connect with recruiters through there. So just a little like insight for you if you've just jumped on Handshake or you didn't realize that, like it's a little bit different than LinkedIn, which is, or Indeed, which is open to the world and a little bit harder to find actual people. So recruiters, if they really want to connect with you, they will make themselves available through there very often. So, okay, let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Javier asked, what if you don't have many hard skills to offer, especially going into interviews and on the day of the job? So as you all think back, when you were first applying, especially before you'd had a lot of your major classes, maybe the undergrad panelists, how do you still make yourself shine, I guess?
I can answer this one. So it is a bit harder if you do not have those sort of skills, because a lot of the applications are asking for you to have those sort of skills. And so I think what you just need to stress if you are able to get an interview is to express your willingness to learn and your enthusiasm about whatever job role that is. Because like hard skills can be taught, enthusiasm, passion, and the drive to succeed cannot. And so I think it's really, really important just to show how passionate you are about the opportunity and how you think you will benefit the team and how you will make a difference.
Good. Me, any comments, Harley? Go ahead.
Completely agree with the demonstrating your willingness to learn. In general, we'd like to think that people or firms posting internship positions, they know you're not going to know it all. One of my internships told me, we're expecting you to learn 99% of what you have to do on the job. And a lot of firms know that, not all, but something that's also really helpful in addition to demonstrating your willingness to learn in an interview is demonstrating how you think and demonstrating how you problem solve. Because if you get asked a question that you don't necessarily know the answer to, it's infinitely better to say, I'm not too sure, but if I had to guess, or if I had to work it out for you, this is what I would do, and these are my assumptions, versus saying, I don't know, or I haven't gone over that in class yet. If you can show that what you can do with the information you're given, it'll go a lot farther for you.
Me, any comments? Did you feel like you were expected to know a bunch of hard skills or come in with that?
I feel like all of the positions that I interview for, like my manager even surprised that I knew how to do VLOOKUP in Excel, which is so weird. But then which means that they didn't really expect students to come in with a lot of knowledge, like a lot of skills, but then definitely problem solving and how to think and how demonstrations that your willingness to learn and all of that, I think be good. And then also the interest for the company and the industry that you're looking for. Because like the two questions beside like tell me about yourself that I always get in the interviews is why this company or why this industry? And I think that's important to demonstrate in the interviews.
One more thing I want to add here, especially when it comes to the technical part, and especially when it comes to finance interviews, oftentimes Google will be your best friend. Googling finance technical interview questions. Indeed has a thing where you could actually go on and look at, like, people can report what questions have been asked in interviews before. That was like 50% of my preparation for every interview is what is this company known for asking for. And I don't know how many people know this, but if you have your seattleu.edu account linked to your LinkedIn, you get access to LinkedIn Learning. It's free online videos on some pretty basic technical skills, whether it's finance, accounting, data analytics. Definitely use some of their finance courses to get ready for interviews. And again, that's free with your school account.
Awesome, you guys, this is so great. Hopefully this is okay. Are you all okay if people reach out to you on LinkedIn, ask, or even through email, through the school system, if there's further questions? Because obviously there's so much we couldn't get to. Unfortunately, the hour goes so fast. Or you're all welcome to reach out to me and I can try to connect you if you have some things that we couldn't get to. And if you'd like to, oh, thanks, Nee, for putting that in. I just want to, before we end, thank you so much, panelists. This was super great. We probably could have gone 2 hours because there's so much good stuff here, but really helpful perspective and feedback. So thank you. You heard echoed a lot today, connecting with these recruiters, connecting with employers, connecting with alums. As much as we can, we'd love to help you do that because we know sometimes that can be overwhelming or hard to hear back from people. So we have multiple things coming up in the next couple weeks. And maybe if Justin or Lori, if you could post our upcoming events page. Just a couple of things to call out. We do have a career fair coming up this quarter. And that's gonna be hosted through Handshake. So if you want to talk directly to employers who are hiring for internships and full-time jobs, that's a great way. The career fairs are a great way to do that because you can sign up for 10-minute one-on-one meetings with them. I think registration for that opened today. So that's posted in Handshake and you can go in and start to see what employers are coming and sign up for one-on-one sessions with them. The career fair is on February 10th from 10:30 to 1:30 p.m. through Handshake. And we'll actually have a prep workshop for that next Tuesday, February 1st from 12:30 to 1:30. So if you haven't done a Handshake virtual career fair before, definitely attend that. And all that information's in Handshake as well. And then later in February, we have February 17th, we have mock interviews with employers. That is the employers are volunteering to help out, but it's a great networking opportunity for you and a way to practice directly with employers on, what interview questions do they ask and get some direct feedback from them. So if you are in the search process, that might be a really good activity to gear up for internship interviews. And then the final thing happening in February, Harley mentioned it, for undergrad and Bridge MBA students, we have Alber's Career Night. It's a networking event, mostly with young alums. And then we also invite some employers and our undergrad mentors. So, again, to kind of build up that making connections with people who are, out in industry to find out how they navigated their journey, get their advice. We'll be hosting that event on Wednesday, February 23rd. It'll be in the evening. We're not quite sure if in person or virtual yet, so stay with us. With this pandemic, everything changes all the time. So just keep your eye out in emails and posters around the building. We'll update what that's going to look like. And then grad students, if you're wanting something similar, we host a very similar event to that in April called Grad Career Connections. Again, another chance to connect with alums and employers. So as much as we can help you with that, we're trying to do that. So please take advantage of those opportunities. And Justin just posted our upcoming events link. And then also this has been recorded. We'll post it to our Albers Placement Center YouTube playlist. There's a lot of videos in there of past workshops we've done. So check that out. We'll have this up in a couple days. So again, thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you all for making time. Thank you all for attending. I hope this was helpful for you. And please reach out to Albers Placement Center. We're happy to help you in your internship search. So good luck, everybody.